by a bipartisan unanimous vote, the Senate passed a bill that declares strawberry shortcake to be the official dessert of the state of Florida. So,
oh my goodness.
as long as it has Florida-made whipped cream on it. So. And if you like key lime pie,
key lime pie should have been there.
Yeah,
That's
well,
right.
it's already the official state pie, so
Oh, okay.
they had to
That's
give
a failure. That's a failure of the key lime growers, in my opinion. Come on.
They had to give a shout out to the strawberry farmer. Anyway, well, we've had kind of an exciting week, so let me get started here with the two construction defect bills. And Derek, feel free to jump in here. I know you guys are deeply into this one, but the Senate bill right now is okay. It's going to change. I think, they're looking at, instead of a 10-year statute of repose, having a 5-year statute of repose. I think that would only affect single family homes. But it's, Derek may have a different perspective, but to me, it sounds like it's a mess. There was in the House, they put the language on last week that it repeals Chapter 558. That's important for us, and that's the reason that we moved it to the opposed column, was because that contains 558.0035, which is the individual liability, or the liability protections for individual engineers. And we don't know really why it's even in that chapter. That chapter is really about the right to cure, but there's not a whole lot there. If you click on that, it'll take you to that. You can see what's exactly in it. But we have received assurances from the Senate sponsor that if 558 does go away in the end through the negotiations, that they would salvage 0035 so that would stay in the statutes. And we had a pretty long discussion about it on the CLGR call Wednesday, and the group voted that, if that's what it comes to, we can accept that. So we'll just have to see how it develops from here. What's your feelings, Derek?
So everything you said, Alan, is on point. Only thing I would add is, this is going to be a late session. It's going to go back and forth till the end. I think the House will play a little games here or there because of the importance it is to the Senate president. But we have got indication the Senate does plan on holding firm where they are. I think ultimately the House will agree or concede to the Senate's position. But this is going to be a late in session before we actually get to finality on this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was reading Politico put out an article yesterday talking about this bill because of the players that are in it, and Disney has come out against the bill, or at least part of the bill. I don't know exactly what their problem is. And obviously the trial lawyers, a lot of them are saying it's the first time Disney and the trial lawyers have ever agreed on something. So interesting, but yeah, that sounds like the project. So anyway, but it looks to me like everything we're hearing right now, that the piece that we care about the most, will be salvaged, and even if it goes into another chapter of the statutes, it will survive the fray, so to speak. So that one, obviously, we've got at the top of the list for that issue, because we can't allow that to happen. On the transportation projects bills, the ones that allow FDOT to use progressive design build in its contracts, those were moving, and then they went through their first committees pretty quick and seem to now have sort of stalled. Those bills also have language that caps the amount that seaports and airports can get from the trust fund on an annual basis. The current law says at least 15%. It doesn't have a cap, and it would cap it at 25. As of now, we're going to stick with support because we're opposed actually to that provision. We were asked last year to help out. The groups that represent seaports and airports haven't really said much this year. So I just assume that maybe that's holding it up there. I know you work with the Airports Council, or is it something else? Or
No, so great question, Alan. I actually just did a call yesterday with Representative Andrade, and so on the House bill, it actually has passed the second committee as well. So it's actually now slated for the last committee, which is Commerce. It's not agenda yet for Commerce. It has not moved since the first stop in the Senate. Did a call yesterday with Chair Andrade at 4 o'clock just to kind of talk to him about the cap. And he said he's having a meeting Tuesday with Secretary Tebow from DOT. And depending upon what the secretary says, meaning if the secretary says they have concerns about the cap, he's willing to, he didn't say remove the cap, but definitely willing to adjust the percentage based on what the secretary is asked him to do or not do. So that meeting is on Tuesday. He also mentioned that, at the end of the day, Chair Angolia, who's the chair of the BIC committee, Commerce Committee, has final say on that. And so he's basically now almost encouraging parties to go talk to Chair Angolia. I will also share, Alan, on that call yesterday was Mark Cruz, who's a lobbyist for the Transit Association, and Mike Rubin from Seaports was on that call as well. Expressed the same concern to him about the cap, and so we all heard the same thing from him. So again, that meeting secretary is on Tuesday. Has a conversation with DOT. They have concerns about the cap, but they're not willing to go on record. And so the meeting on Tuesday between the rep and the secretary, I should say, will be very, very important because he's only going to really make any changes if DOT secretary says it needs to be changed. But other than that, the holdup on the Senate side, going back to the meeting we had with Hooper, Hooper has really been waiting, really kind of following. What he told us is he's doing the bill as a favor, really, for ANATH, but also he agreed to be the sponsor, the Senate sponsor for Andrade. So he's following Andrade's lead. So his goal is to have Andrade finalize what his bill looks like. And then he's going to do basically a strike all amendment at the next stop he prefers, kind of line the bills up in that regard. That's why he's slowing himself down, just because he's hearing there may be some changes coming.
okay. Yeah, so it's the House bill is now passed 2 committees. I must have done the report before that happened, but
that just happened though. I think it happened yesterday.
Right. And that's when I put this together, was yesterday morning. So, so anyway, everybody be aware that the House bill has now passed 2 committees and has 1 to go. We did get some movement this week on the professional structural engineer license. It passed its first committee in the Senate. Baxley's all for it and thinks he can get it passed in the Senate. Again, the holdup on this bill seems to be in the House. Last I had heard, leadership in the House had basically said they didn't really like it, but if it came up, they wouldn't do anything to stop it. But that could be, what's holding it up. You never know actually what they say to the chair in the background. So anyway, we're hoping that will work. That plays into, the whole Surfside thing. I'll get to that in a minute because there's some big changes there. This acquisition of professional services, we've been asked what we think, and we've taken an opposed position, CLGR, that, basically this just removes the requirement that agencies, when they're doing their procurement, spread the work out amongst, multiple companies. Just removes the requirement. Doesn't say they can't do it. It just removes the requirement. The biggest issue that I have with these bills is that open CCNA. And so we'll be keeping a really close eye. It went through its first committee in the Senate on Tuesday. There were no amendments to it or anything, so it stays the way it was. But we'll be watching that one really closely. John has talked to Senator Gruters, who basically told us that he did it as a courtesy to Representative Gregory. It's a constituent issue for Gregory, and he had done it as a courtesy, but that he had not asked for that bill to be put up in that committee. It was just Hooper's the chair of that committee and their buddies, and so Hooper put it up, just seeing that it was Gruder's bill. So I don't know. I think, what we're doing right now is going to the next committee chair in the Senate and saying, hey, look, Gruder's doesn't really seem to care about this a whole lot. And he hasn't asked that it be put on the agenda. So, as long as you can, keep it off the agenda. The issue there is Gruder's is also their Florida Republican Party chair. So I guess that probably helps carry a little weight. But anyway, so it still hasn't moved in the House. I'm going to get in touch with Representative Fisher, who's the chair of the first committee in the House, and see if he's planning to put it up at all, because we're getting past week 3. You start getting nervous if your bill hasn't passed at all. So or hasn't passed its first committee. So I'll get a read from him exactly what he's planning on doing with that. Hopefully he doesn't have any plans to put it on the agenda and we can be done with it. All the rest of these on page 2 right here, the municipal water and sewer rates, the infrastructure project funding, none of those bills have moved. And so I keep them on the list, but if they don't start to move here in the next week or 2, we'll probably just go ahead and pull those back off. Which then brings me to the building inspections bills. There was one that came out yesterday. It's a committee bill that, as far as I can tell, it's a much larger bill. It's about 79 pages or something. So I haven't gone through the whole thing. I know Laura took a look at it yesterday. And it appears that they've just taken the language from 1702 and put that in this 7042 bill, and but then loaded in all the other things that the Bar Association and others have been working on, such as the reserves that are required, the ability to waive reserves, all of that type of stuff that will be put on to the condo association. So that's why the bill is much bigger. The ones that the big thing we need to change in there is they still have the language that the phase inspections needed to be done by a special inspector for threshold buildings. And our group, feels, first of all, there just aren't enough of them. They, in their world, what they're doing is inspections of new buildings where they can see everything. A lot of the folks that do just existing buildings, may not have that certification just because they don't do that work. So they can inspect the building. So I'd like to see them drop back to what our recommendation was, and that was, structural engineers with 10 years of design experience and 5 years of inspection experience would be the requirement to do those phase 2 inspections. So we'll see. I'm going to get some language over to John here in just a little bit for him to pass along to Senator Bradley and see if she's willing to do that. It's my feeling, and Scott, I think I heard you on here a little earlier. It's my feeling that, from listening to the group, that, with the limited number of special inspectors, and they're busy doing what they do anyway, that, it would just be very hard to get a whole lot of inspections done if that's the requirement. So I think Senator Bradley will be okay with that. The big
Sorry, just to add to that, just to add to that, Alan. Yeah, special inspectors are a much smaller group than engineers and architects, which is what we recommended for the people that are going to inspect the building. So if it did end up going that way, we would have to really tackle threshold inspection law next, and maybe figure out a way to open up qualifications of threshold inspectors. But I agree with what you just said.
All right. Yeah. So we'll work on that. The big problem that we find there is, and the reason I think they drop back, because I've seen that in several of the bills that are out there, that they go to that definition for the inspectors, is that we don't have in the statutes a definition of a structural engineer. That's the closest thing that you can get in the statutes. That's why I say that structural engineer's license kind of plays into that. So I think I still think we do it by criteria. I don't think we go messing with that license bill very much, but I still think, we just set the criteria for the experience that the engineer has to have to do those phase 2 inspections, and just kind of leave it at that. So, but we'll see what the senator says. The rest of these bills, I keep them on here because they're out there, but none of them have moved. It's kind of coming from different directions now with all the different stakeholders. I mean, you've got the condo associations, the lawyers, the insurance companies, the banks, and obviously the banks and the insurance companies could actually do this without legislation. If they would just say, if you don't inspect your building every 5 years, we're not going to insure it. Or, if you don't have inspections every so many years, we're not going to write any mortgages on them. They could set those rules on their own, but they haven't done so yet. So we will keep moving forward with what we have. But the new bill, if anybody wants to look it up in the meantime, if you go to flsenate.gov, up at the top, there's a spot where you type in a bill number. The bill number is 7042. If anybody wants to take a look at that, and we'll have it on the next report for next week. So do we have any questions? Well, this is going to be an easy one then. Hopefully, we're kind of settling in. We're going to be able to see now what's really got chances of movement and possibly passing, and but
Alan, I know you talked briefly about the survey bill. Is that going to move forward, or?
Oh, the education requirements?
Yeah.
No, the Senate sponsor said there's no intention of putting that bill up.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah, for those that weren't aware of that, they ran it last year and brought it back again this year. And you could basically, in some circumstances, have a high school diploma or just an AA degree. And with this, I think 6 years of experience, you'd be able to sit for the surveyor's license exam. So they're a little more important to us than that. But we do have assurances that one's not going to come up.
My colleague will be very happy.
Yeah, always when you talk to folks outside of this, always sort of frame your response. And in the legislature, anything can happen, and a deal's a deal until it's not a deal anymore. And so we never know until they sign you die. But I feel
politics, yeah.
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable at this point. If they were going to move it, I think they would have already said it. But it is a big issue for Representative Mariano. She seems to really, it's another constituent issue. She's got somebody that moved from a different state or something, and now they can't get licensed in Florida, and so she comes up with this big idea to reduce the education requirements.
Alan or Derek, can you give us your thoughts or an update on the governor's gas tax suspension proposal?
All I can say about it is his proposal, cutting the gas tax, would be paid for with monies that we've received from the federal government for pandemic aid. So it wouldn't deplete the trust fund in any way. There was another bill that never gained a Senate sponsor that we had on this report. I took it off. That would have stopped the indexing on the gas tax, so that we didn't get that annual increase, which would have just kind of frozen it, where it currently stands. But that one didn't pass. That would have actually resulted in less money for the fund moving forward. But the governor's idea is he would replace that money with the pandemic funds.
Hey, Alan, this is Rick Avery. Question going back to the transportation project bill, the progressive design bill. Y'all were talking about a cap, and I missed the part of a cap on what? What's the cap on?
I think what you're referring to is they would only be able to use it on projects of $250 million or more. So it would only be used on mega projects, and there's only one out there right now. At least in the discussions, there's only one they talk about, and that's the West Shore interchange in Tampa. But it's for huge $250 million plus projects.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have anything else? Well, then I'll let Derek get back to work.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank
All right.
you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.